when I told my dad that, my dad just shook his head and he's like, you don't make sense to me. And I was like, Dad, I really feel like I want to do this. And the thing is, the great thing about this whole thing is that no one can say no.
Hi, Alice.
Hi.
How are you?
And how are you?
I'm doing well. I don't know if you remember, but I've spoke with you a couple times before in San Diego. I'm now in Nashville, but I appreciate you doing this again. Thank you so much.
What made you decide to go to Nashville?
Just my family and I. We wanted to get a change of pace, more place to like a bigger place to live, essentially.
Nice, very cool.
Yeah, we love it here. We love it here. But last time we chatted was at the Hard Rock Hotel in San Diego, and you were playing. I think it was Wonderfest or something like that. It was like 2019
on the shore, on the seafront.
Yeah, and we were hanging out at the Hard Rock. That was so fun. And my son and my wife were there. We like family interviewed you.
Oh, yeah. I vaguely remember that day. I remember that not many people showed up to our set, and I was very sad.
Really? Oh man, I'm sorry.
But it was a lovely day. It was a lovely day otherwise.
Yeah. Well, I just watched your performance you did at the it's like for a music discovery project. It's like you and an orchestra, and what was it? It was Frankfurt Radio. Yeah. Oh my gosh. What a beautiful performance. That was so good.
Thank you so much. We'll be putting that out on as like a streamable version of that with orchestra very soon. So
really, I found it on YouTube. So
yeah, it's on YouTube, but it was such an amazing thing to be part of. So I had so much fun.
It's so good. And I love your new record. It is, I'm just such a big fan of yours. So I'm so very excited to catch up with you.
Thank you so much. What? I'm blushing. Yeah. Wow. That's no. I mean, you always wonder how the next record's if it's gonna be cool, if people are gonna like it or not. So I genuinely have no idea with this one. I really don't have like a feeling of like, oh, I think it's gonna come across really well or not. It's one of those records where I like listening to it personally. I think it's a cool one. So.
No, it's beautiful. It's awesome. And it almost feels like, I know it's probably not intended to be like a concept record, but you can kind of feel like this, sense of how it starts and then till, how the whole thing ends with the other side. And like, now you're on the other side of this thing that had been going on. And it's such a cool album. And I'm glad it's a full album because not a lot of people are doing that. And because you put out Vertigo a while ago, and then when Island and Heroes came out, I was like, oh my gosh, like Heroes is like one of my favorite songs. And then the full record comes out and I'm like, just blown away again. 100 Stories. What a beautiful song that is.
Thank you so much. I love 100 Stories. It's one of my favorites.
I think that's my favorite one on the record, to be honest.
Thank you. Wow.
Yeah, no, it's a great album. So, but again, thank you for doing this. But our podcast is about you and your journey in music. I know we've heard your story before. You've told it numerous times, I'm sure, just due to no roots. But I'd love to just like briefly catch on that and then kind of pick up where 2019 left you, and then obviously through this release.
Sure.
Cool. So actually, where were you born? Because I know you've moved like a million times, but where were you actually born?
I was born in Frankfurt, which made that music discovery project really special because I was coming back to the place where I was born, but I didn't spend much time there. I moved to Connecticut when I was 3 months old.
Okay. So, but you were actually born there. How special.
There. Yeah. So I was born in Frankfurt, then moved to Connecticut, then moved to Canada, then from Canada moved to Munich, then from Munich. So then the story.
Yeah. Then it keeps going. But exactly. How long were you in Connecticut?
Like a year or two.
Okay, so you were moving like very rapidly. Obviously, how many times you moved like 14 times or something insane like that in like a very short period of time. If you look at it,
it was intense, but I don't remember much of Connecticut, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. No reason to, I guess. But so then you get to Canada. Well, so you started writing, or not writing, but you started playing music at a very, very early age, right? You picked up piano young.
Yeah. So I started playing the piano when I was 5, and then started singing when I was 9. But songwriting came much later. I didn't know I could write songs till I was like 17.
Okay. And with piano, is that something like Do you come from a musical household at all? I never asked you that before.
My dad plays the piano and is kind of like a hobby songwriter, actually. He was the one who always wrote songs for like me and my choir. I never dreamed of writing music. I was like, too hard. I don't want I can't do this. I don't have the talent for that. But yeah, no one else in my family plays music. It's just literally him, and everyone else does like something smart.
But he wrote for your choir?
Yeah, I was in my school choir. He offered, I think he just kind of missed being a musician. Like he was always a hobby musician. So it was like doing it in his spare time, but his job was something completely different. And so he would always ask my choir leader when I was at school, and he'd be like, "Do you guys need a song? I wrote a song."
Wow. What were the songs about? Do you remember any of them?
Oh, it was like a Christmas song or something. I remember all the lyrics and the melody. So it was pretty good for me to remember all of that.
Sure.
So yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you were in the chorus choir, and then you started writing songs in a songwriting course, correct?
Exactly. In the 11th, 12th grade, that's when they offered a course at school called Songwriting. And I was like, sure, I'll sign up for this. This is like the first creative course that they've now offered at this German school I was going to, because everything was always very kind of like, it was very much like a university, but for like a kid. So like you're always studying, you're always, you have to pay attention to every class. It wasn't fun going to school in Germany. But yeah, so they offered this one course that was like, you can be creative, and I loved it, and that's what led me to where I am now.
Okay. Were you writing creative writing before that or no?
In Canada, I loved, we had creative writing as a subject. In Germany, that didn't exist.
Okay. So how old were you when you moved to Germany? Just for timeline wise.
13.
Okay. And you lived in Canada from what ages, or roughly?
From 1 or 2 to like 13.
Oh, okay. So you're there kind of a big chunk of time.
I was there for like 12, 13 years and moved around once then in Canada.
Okay. But you're in Canada until you're about 13. So you were creative writing in Canada then?
Yeah. So they offered that at school there. Okay. But then as soon as we moved to Germany,
it changed.
It was more about like analyzing poems and writing summaries and writing, I only know the German words for it, like Erörterung and Aufsätze, as like you write essays anyway, but we only like essays, that's still like a personal kind of opinion on something when you're writing an essay about something. That only came much later in Germany. Like they didn't do anything. And when I say anything creative, I mean anything creative. Like it just didn't exist.
Art classes, nothing. It was just all academic.
Sorry, there was art classes once a week.
Oh, but it wasn't like something that
even then it wasn't like, like feel free to do whatever. It's like you get a mark for how good this is or how bad this is. And it's like compared to what I had in Canada, it was nothing. So I was very sad when I moved, because I was like, suddenly I felt like my creativeness was being put into it was just being capped. Like I couldn't be the person I wanted to be.
Yeah. I mean, I know Canada is awesome when it comes to supporting their country and their arts. I mean, you can get grants and like, they're very, very supportive of it, which is awesome. I think the only other country I've heard that does that is New Zealand. They're also like very supportive like that. And I'm sure that's so tough to go from that to now you're not allowed to be creative. Like you can paint and then that's it. Or you can do this little bit of art project and that's it.
Yeah.
But then they offer songwriting. So you take on the songwriting class, and do you have to know an instrument, or like at that point, like when you go into that, because you were classically trained, right, on piano?
I was classically trained on the piano, and I also was classically trained on like vocals. So I've been taking classical vocal lessons for quite some time, which was kind of difficult because I then didn't really know how to sing in like a more singer-songwriter poppy way, which came later when I actually got accepted to study songwriting. So
okay.
Yeah.
So when you went into this class, it was were you, I mean, tell me, just you get in this class, they're teaching you how to songwrite, and you're playing guitar or you're writing on piano? Like, how did that work?
I started with guitar, even though I had no idea how to play guitar, but that was the refreshing part of it. It was like, oh, take an instrument that you haven't classically learned yet and that has all these rules, do whatever you want with it, write a song. And then that's when I really discovered the love for songwriting, because it was just, there's no more rules anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that.
And I know you went to school for music, right? You ended up going to college for that.
I studied songwriting when I think I was 20 when I got enrolled in the course. Yeah.
Okay. And were you living in Germany at that time as well?
I was. We had just moved to England, but I had moved then to study to Germany afterwards.
Okay. Did you move to Germany, back to Germany to pursue music then? Or was it just you wanted to go to that specific school there?
I wanted to go to that specific school, and the problem was I didn't have any money to afford like English universities. That was the year where they raised the prices, still nowhere near as high as American prices, but still high. Okay. And I was like, I don't want to come out of college or university with a bunch of like a huge amount of debt.
Sure.
So there was this one university that offered a course for free, and it was a bachelor's degree. And I was like, okay, if I get in here, it's a sign. I won't apply anywhere else. I'll just apply here. And if they take me, great. If they don't, whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And I go back to studying business or whatever. And they took me.
And you said it was a grueling process to get in, right? Like
it's a lot of like
hoops you had to jump through to just even get in after you get accepted or whatever.
Well, they say they have like 1,000 applicants and they take 10 songwriters.
Oh my gosh.
So I felt really like relieved when I got the email being like, hey, you've made it to the next round.
Right. What a validating moment. Like, okay, I should be doing this. Like, this is something that other people are kind of co-signing on. That's awesome.
Exactly. And I think that's what also gave me a little bit of a boost in confidence, because I thought to myself, you know what, maybe I'm not as shit as I thought I would be. And maybe there are some people that think my songs are kind of cool. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where it started to happen. And I met my band there. I met my manager there. Mm-hmm. We were all just friends in the same semester.
And you guys have stayed that way, at least up until 2019 since, right?
Yeah. Not unfortunately, my guitar player then kind of left us and said he wasn't really feeling like the tour. I don't think he wanted to be a touring musician, because we then started touring a lot.
Yeah.
And so then we got Reggie on board, who I also met at university, but he was from America, so he lives in Seattle.
Okay, yeah, and he's the one that I think has been playing with you for a while, Reggie.
Exactly. So
yeah, so I met him like in 2018. The first time I met you, I was working at a radio station. I interviewed you there, and you did like a little 3-song acoustic-y set in this little studio thing, and he played guitar then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. That's him.
Okay.
So he joined a little bit later. He joined like 2017, 18. But still we've been together ever since. And I love, like, I really feel with my band, it's not me and a band, it's like my band, and they were just too lazy to figure out what we'd call ourselves. So instead we just call it's just Alice Merton. So yeah, I love them, and I don't want to ever replace them. I love playing with them. My bass player kind of also is still on the fence of like, do I want to be a touring musician? Especially now since COVID, like a lot of them unfortunately had to get like full-time jobs. And
right. I mean, what a devastating the music industry took such a hard, not that everyone else didn't, but like, if that's your livelihood is just touring and doing that, like, yeah, it's all taken away. It was
awful. And I'm so lucky. Like we said to the guys, we will pay for the concerts we would have had, which was a few, but not that many in 2020. Mm-hmm. But still, like, I was lucky that I kind of owned my own rights. So I could kind of move off of that for a little bit. But yeah, like if you're either working on crew or you're a touring musician or building stages, it was an awful time for so many people. And And I think that kind of has really shaped everyone's perspective now as well, because everyone's a little bit nervous. Like, what about if it comes back to that? You know, like, what about if we're going to go back into lockdown? The numbers are going up again. They're saying the variants are actually just as bad as the first variants. And then it's getting into it. Like, I don't know how it is in America right now, but we're in a really weird state at the moment in Europe. I find, like, obviously no one's wearing masks, or not many people are wearing masks anymore.
Yeah, no one. I mean, at least I'm in Tennessee, and no one. I think people just gave that up a while ago.
Yeah,
like, unfortunately, it's
but the numbers are rising here so rapidly, and I'm hearing more and more people actually getting quite sick. And when I had COVID in February, I was out for 5 weeks.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, you had it bad.
Yeah, and I had the jab. I had the vaccine.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. My son that you met, my older son, he got it, but his was really bizarre because he didn't feel bad, but he couldn't taste anything for like a month.
Okay.
He was really sick for about 48 hours, and then it kind of came through our house. But my wife and I got the vaccine, so it was like it didn't really hit us that bad. But even for him, like I said, he lost his taste, and nobody else did in my house, so that was really bizarre.
I had this weird thing with my taste where I didn't lose it. I gained this awful taste in my mouth for like weeks, where everything tasted like metal.
Oh, maybe that's what he had. He had he can't even eat like certain things that he used to love anymore, just because it reminds him of that taste.
Yeah, because it reminds you of that taste. Like a lot of people are like, oh, I can't taste anything. I would have rather not tasted anything than having everything or certain things taste like metal.
That's what it was. That's exactly how he had it. Things tasted terrible. One of the things that were Oreos. I remember he's like, these are gross. And I'm like, oh man, that's a bummer.
And I remember being so confused in the beginning, because I was like, this isn't one of the symptoms they're talking about. They're saying you lose your taste. And so I was like, are these now new things that I'm smelling that are actually in there the whole time, but we as humans can't smell? And they're actually like all these toxins in these things, and it's horrible. Like, I was so confused. With me, it was like pickles, ketchup, fries. Like, it was so weird. All these things that I love, chips, I kept smelling chips and being like, oh, this is gross.
Oh man.
It's so confusing. I was so confused, man.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're feeling better, because that sounds awful. That sounds awful.
I think the worst part was realizing that that I was really like, I couldn't sing for 5 weeks because I was just out of breath all the time. I completely forgot that it's not just the voice that could be affected, but the lungs. If my lungs don't work, I can't perform. So that was terrifying.
Yeah, I bet because if that doesn't work, then I mean, what do you do at that point? You just have to
sat on the couch for weeks and in my bed, and would go walking once a day, and then feel exhausted afterwards and have to lie down.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm glad that you're feeling better. That sounds terrible. Okay, so we met last time in November 2019, and then a few months later, obviously COVID hits. And when do you start writing this record? And actually, my first question on the record is, I don't know if you've answered this or a million people have asked, is S.I.D.E.S an acronym for something? Or you just put periods?
It is an acronym, but it's an acronym that I decided not to tell anyone.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of like, so with Mint, I realized I was having a lot of panic attacks because I felt like I was giving something so private to the world and sharing every detail of it. And I kind of thought, I had this idea, like, what about for this album, if I avoid that, I would keep one thing private that only I know, that is so personal. And there's another reason, like, I didn't call it S.I.D.E.S because of the acronym. I call it S.I.D.E.S because it was a word that kept coming in every song. We're not two sides of the same team.
Oh, sure.
Blind side, the other side. It wasn't like I picked, it just kept happening. And I realized kind of that this album felt like a journey on a Rubik's Cube for me, where the Rubik's Cube keeps turning, but I keep like trying to find a different side and keep trying to find a way out of the situation and going from one kind of phase to the next. Like, that's what this album is. It's like this roller coaster of emotions and events that happened in my life. And then when I decided to call it S.I.D.E.S, I was like, you know what, I want to make it an acronym and keep that one thing for me so that it never feels like I lose the control over it. If that kind of makes sense. It
does.
But it's like, it's this one thing that I get to keep to myself that I know is there. But I won't share with anyone at the moment because I can hold on to that. And I didn't feel like I had that with Mint. Like I was very open with all the emotions and the panic attacks and the fear and then my childhood it freaked me out and it caused me to have a lot of anxiety. And so I thought to myself, it would be kind of nice with S.I.D.E.S to kind of just have one thing that means something to me.
I love that. Because I was trying to figure it out. I'm like, how come no one's like, I don't see the answer to this. Like, I'm like, I don't want to come off like an idiot. You're like, yeah, it's blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh, but now it makes me feel better that you haven't.
But it's, I don't think anyone would come up with it because it's a very personal kind of message in those letters.
Sure. Well, I think that's cool that you have that and you do keep control of that but I think not saying that you shouldn't do that, but your records resonate with people too, because you're so vulnerable. Do you feel like that? Like, with the EP and then Mint, the way you talk or your lyrics and the way you present yourself is very vulnerable. And you even do that in the new album, aside from the acronym.
Yeah. Aside from that one. From that one word.
But I mean, just from that one thing. I'm not saying that like, oh, like I can't believe you're not. It's just
when I told my dad that, my dad just shook his head and he's like, you don't make sense to me. And I was like, Dad, I really feel like I want to do this. And the thing is, the great thing about this whole thing is that no one can say no, because there's not like 10 people in the decision making of my albums. It's like, I can call it whatever I want. Like I could call it dog poo and no one would complain.
Well, that's the greatest thing about your career that you've built for yourself, right? I mean, nobody can tell you what.
I hope it's sustainable. I really hope that people will still be interested in the music. I hope I don't go too off the grid where I just start writing things that no one can relate to.
I don't think that will happen. I mean, you're 2 full albums and an EP and I don't think that you have to worry about that.
Never say never, but yeah, we'll see. No, I enjoyed making this album. It really helped me out of an awful time in my life. And I really feel like this album saved me in a lot of ways, without sounding too dramatic.
No.
But yeah.
When I talked to you last, you said you were working on an album. You're like, oh yeah, we're going to record some of it in Berlin and then maybe Toronto and LA. And like, and you were, but you also made a point to say that because Nico's the person you work with, correct? On all your stuff.
I worked with him on my first album.
Oh, okay.
I worked with him on this album. He, that's kind of.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's a lot of him in this album as well.
Okay. Well, that was a thing that you were kind of discussing with me, was just like, so that sounds like this record was done completely different then. So you had a, bless
Sorry.
You. No. So what the point of where you were when I spoke to you to where the record ended up, it sounds like it went into a totally different course.
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know if you feel comfortable talking about anything about that. I mean,
no. 100%. Like when we had our conversation, and I'm remembering more and more of this place now where we had the conversation and your family, meeting them as well. And I think I was sat in like the middle of you guys, and then
and you're like, I feel like I'm at tea with your family, and then we invited you to dinner, and you said you would come, so we're still holding you to that. I don't know if you know that. My wife's like, you better remind her.
Next time I'll let you know.
You're coming over, and you're like, what are you gonna cook us? And I'm like, way to put me on the spot, and we didn't have an answer for you. But we've discussed it. My wife's half Filipino, so we're gonna make you some Filipino food.
That would be amazing. I'd love to try some Filipino food, especially if it's like authentic, because
it is.
My wife would be really good at making that.
Yeah, so you're definitely invited over, and I heard you bake, and my wife bakes too. So
perfect combination.
Yeah, exactly. So sorry, back to your.
It basically turned out everything other than how I expected it would turn out. Like,
okay,
I thought I was making it with the same person I kind of made the first album with.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was also going to be working with people in the US and an amazing producer, Cause, who I also met in Toronto. And then the pandemic came, and I don't really do Zoom conference or Zoom sessions.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of was like, you know what, I'm just going to create this album in Berlin. This is going to be a Berlin album. And I was able to work with 2 producers in London, which was great because I was kind of, when things opened up a bit more, I was going home to visit my parents and then wanted to work in London a little bit. So yeah, it was, the process of it was very different than when in 2019, when you and I kind of talked about it. And that's okay, because I really feel like it helped me open my eyes to a lot of things that I knew weren't good. Like they weren't healthy in a lot of ways. Like the producer that we were talking about before, who did the first album, kind of didn't feel comfortable with me working with other producers, which is something that I've always been doing. Like I even did it for the first album, but kind of said to me like, hey, I'm either doing all of your album or none of it. And I was like, and that's really where kind of the idea of blindside, I think, originated, of someone holding a gun to your head being like, you do this or there will be consequences. And I don't like it when someone puts ultimatums on someone else and makes them feel trapped. And so I think that kind of made us go into kind of 2 different directions when it came to music. I don't think we were inspired by the same things anymore. And then I went through a very traumatic breakup, which for me was awful. I felt awful for a very long time. My grandmother passed a few months later.
Oh my gosh.
I wasn't able to say goodbye because she was in Ireland and couldn't go to the funeral, and I felt horrible. And I really felt like it just kept spiraling downhill. Reading the news every day. Like I'm lucky that everyone in my family is healthy, knock on wood. And during that time was healthy, and we all kind of came out of that. But just, yeah, I feel like that was just such a roller coaster ride for so many of us these past 2 years. And I'm kind of happy I can kind of close this album and be like, okay, I'm ready for whatever else is going to happen. Like, let's open this next chapter because I am ready.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and that's what I felt like when I listened to the record. I mean, the last song, The Other Side, I mean, then it's okay, we hopefully are past this and we are, now looking towards the future. With this album, when you got it out or when it was finished, was it like a therapeutic moment? Like, here it's done.
Yeah. The moment I handed in all the masters, which was quite a few months ago, I was so like, I really pushed myself to get to finish everything. Cause I was the executive producer on this album. There was no one overseeing the whole project. It was literally me working on every production with every single producer I worked with. And that was a lot of work. And I really feel like my ears at some point were just like, they felt like they were bleeding because I was just so focused on certain details in the productions and the mixes and figuring out like what the right snare was and the certain tempos and like cutting out low ends and figuring out like, it was a lot to kind of balance on 15 songs as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I was very overwhelmed, but just very thankful that it was over and that I could kind of close that chapter and be like, okay, I'm ready for the next project.
Yeah. And was it, I mean, having time, right? It was probably unlimited time to put the album out, just in the sense that, well, you don't have a label to really answer to, which is awesome. Not somebody going, you need 2 weeks and then we have to see a new record from you. But having more time
exactly
to sit with these songs, like, do you feel like you ran into a spiral of listening to something like Blindside? You're listening to the song, you're like, oh, I don't really love this one little snare hit, I'm gonna have to go. Were you going back and forth and back and forth?
Absolutely. I was letting my this is basically how it happened. I would write the song, we'd work on the production, I'd let it sit for a month, we'd go back to it, whoever I did it with, work on it, change certain things. I was changing things until the day Blindside was released. That was the hardest production for me to do because I kept hearing different things. I kept thinking, oh, I have to take this out, I have to put this in. So that mix had been changed literally 3 days before I put it out. I was, like the version on the record is actually on the vinyl, because I had to hand that in earlier, is different from the version you'll hear on like streaming platforms.
Really? I'm glad I bought the vinyl. I bought the peach one.
You both be very nice.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for the support. That's so sweet.
Of course. Well, I will say, when I ordered it, I had the website that's producing your or distributing your vinyl is in German, and you have to like hit the thing to make the switch. But when I get the email confirmation, it was in German, but it worked out. But I have it.
Oh no,
that's
great.
on the way.
They deliver it in English.
No, but Google is smart enough to be like, oh, wait, would you like to choose the English
would
version?
Would you like to translate it? Yes, please.
But yeah,
man, that's funny.
Yeah, it was the teal or the peach. We went with the peach, but now I kind of want to go back and just buy the teal to have it. So we might have to do that. But I love it. And that's cool. I can't wait to hear the different version.
You'll hear some of the songs have us like, I don't know if you'll notice it with Blindside. There's one very like obvious one in the very beginning of the song, but I'm not going to say what it is. You can, that'll be something for you to
I'll see if I can hear it, then I'll bring it up when we have dinner at my house.
All right, sounds like
I'll let you go here in a second because I know you're busy.
Yeah, I think I have the next interview at exactly
right now.
Right, I think it's at 5:30. It's a very strict.
Yeah, sorry about this.
Timetable. Oh, please do not be sorry. This is amazing. Yeah, I've got one more podcast as a. So, but this has been really lovely as well.
Yeah, I have one more quick question before I let you go. Do you have any advice for aspiring artists?
Okay, I don't know if it's good advice, so I'm just gonna put that out there that it's advice, but I don't know if it's good. My advice would really be follow your gut when it comes to music and not what everyone else is doing or what the industry is saying you should do. The people that have always inspired me have been the people that kind of had the risks in their career of being like, you know what, companies, labels have been telling them this song is too long or this song is not good enough or it's not gonna make or break you, and then them doing it anyway and somehow making it work. And that would be my piece of advice, to kind of just go forward with what you think sounds good to you. And also figure out if you're going to love a song years later after writing it. Like maybe, so I think it's sometimes nice to sit on a song for a few months if you have that opportunity and see, like, do you still love it in 6 months' time? Because if you do, the chances are that you'll love it in 5 years' time is pretty big if you still love it in 6 months' time. Bringing it backward.